which is exciting and something that we have suspected for a while. So anyway, that was amazing. We just got a new cat, so now we have two tabbies. We'll see how they get along. But anyway, it is so wonderful to be here. I am so just incredibly grateful to have been asked. We booked this a while ago, and I think I can safely speak for Robert and myself that neither of us expected it to be quite the situation that it is when we agreed to come. And it's a busy time, it's a busy week. And I was coming up here and thinking, oh, it's so, there's just so much going on. I barely have time for this. And, and then you're sitting on the stage and looking out at this community. And for me, realizing like this is 100% the most important thing that I'll be doing this week. So thank you. Because as I firmly believe, and as I've written in my newsletter, and I'll talk to you in a second about what that newsletter is, but I firmly believe that community is the antidote to fascism. Community, love, connection, art, joy, all of which we're going to experience in this event today. These are all areas where fascism can't breathe. It literally deprives it of oxygen, right? Fascism is cruelty, separation, division, lies. That when you come into a place where there is community, connection, truth, joy, celebration, you're literally starving it out. And that's what we are going to need to do. So, thank you. I'm going to set a little timer for myself, because otherwise I will lose track of how much time I'm talking up here. But let's see here. We're going to set a timer for 15 minutes. Okay, so 14 minutes. So for those of you who don't know me, I have a newsletter called Chop Wood, Carry Water, and I'm going to tell you why. First of all, thank you. I'm so excited to hear about the people who came here from New Jersey and then all over California. I know my friend Lisa is here somewhere, who came from, I know that was you, came from Los Angeles, and there's just, it's incredible to have you all here from so many places. My newsletter, Chop Wood, Carry Water, I started right after Trump was elected the first time. And I'll tell you about it just because the name is actually important. It's a bad name. I think it's a terrible name for a political newsletter, but it is the name because that's what got stuck to it. And the reason I called it that was because when Trump was elected the first time, I fell into an immediate crisis, as I think a lot of us did. And it was an emotional crisis, it was an existential crisis, political crisis. And I had this phrase, chop wood, carry water, from a previous crisis I had been through. I had been through a divorce at 35, I had to move in with my dad. It was very humbling, it was very terrible. And as I was going through this terrible divorce, very unfortunate set of circumstances, it felt as if the process would never end, and there was not going to be life on the other side of it. And my dad, who had been through two or three divorces, a lot of divorces, told me, I know what you're going through, I've been through it, it's very long, it's a terrible process. And I said, well, how am I going to get through it? He said, you're gonna do something, I'm gonna tell you a phrase, you're gonna chop wood, carry water. And I had never heard of it before. It's, I think, from a book about Buddhism, but he just took the phrase. He said, this is what I do in hard times. Just look at the thing right in front of you to do. You chop wood, you carry water, you take the survival actions, and you get through the day. Stop thinking about what's gonna happen in the future. You get through the day and you do the things. And one day you're gonna wake up, if you do that, and this is gonna be behind you. And I didn't believe him. And that is an important thing to remember as we're in this moment. I did not believe him. But I believed him enough to do it. I didn't believe things were going to be okay, but I believed him enough to do that. So that's what I started to do. I stopped worrying about the future, stopped worrying about is this ever going to get better, and I started just chop wood, carry water. And the thing is that I knew for a fact things were never going to be okay again, and then they were. They were, despite my knowing that they weren't going to be. And so when Trump was elected, it was the first thing I thought of. I had a girlfriend called me that night crying, and she said to me, what are we going to do? And I immediately said, I think we're just going to chop wood, carry water. Now, that is what I started with the newsletter. I started gathering actions, the sort of wood chopping and water carrying that I could do, and then a couple of people asked me if I would tell them what I was doing. And so I started sending it out to like my husband and a couple of friends and that girl who I talked to on the phone. And then that grew and grew and grew because I found that it was actually something I happened to be good at, was sort of bundling actions in small digestible ways for other people. And that became the newsletter. But a big part of the newsletter is not just that we take these actions because they're going to help us win elections and fight the bad guys and fight fascism, but we also take them because they keep us sane. And they keep us whole, and they keep us on the good side. And I don't mean that just on the good side of elections, but on the good side of humanity, right? My husband actually sent me just this morning, I was talking about getting up here and talking with very little preparation, as is my wont. And he sent me this Wendell Berry quote, which I think is really fitting for right now. Wendell Berry wrote, "Much protest is naive. It expects quick, visible improvement and gives up when such improvement does not come. Protesters who hold out longer have perhaps understood that success is not the proper goal." And you'll hear this again and again from people who are longtime activists, by the way. If protest depended on success, there would be little protest of any durability or significance. History simply affords too little evidence that anyone's individual protest is of any use. Protest that endures, I think, is moved by a hope far more modest than that of public success, namely the hope of preserving qualities in one's own heart and spirit that would be destroyed by acquiescence. Again, that was Wendell Berry. And you'll hear similar things. There's a Hubbell quote that I love a lot. It talks about really similar things, and Rebecca Solney has talked about this, about the fact that we do this whether or not we know that it will succeed. And that brings me back to my divorce days. That again, I did not believe that what I was doing made sense. I did not believe that I was ever going to be okay. I knew my father was probably wrong. But I took the actions anyway. And that is what my newsletter asks us to do because it keeps us human. It keeps us hopeful. I often say that hope is an action. It's not a feeling. I don't think very many of us feel hopeful right now. And that's okay. How we feel is important when we're talking to our friends and family, our therapists, our dogs, whatever. But what we do is what will matter for this democracy. What we do is what will matter for ourselves, for our children, for our communities. So we don't have to believe that things are going to be okay to keep doing the right thing. And that is what activists over time have said over and over again. A lot of times when we take these actions, things do change. And I want to remind you that every great movement, especially in American history, but in human history in general, has been brought about by activists, not by governments. Governments are pushed into it eventually, sometimes, but they're pushed into it by activists. The movement for gay marriage, civil rights. I'm a big student of sort of mid-century American politics. I'm quite obsessed with Lyndon Johnson in the Kennedy years, Vietnam, civil rights. I've read a lot on that recently in particular. And Lyndon Johnson, who signed the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act into law, was pushed to that by activists who'd been working for decades before that, right? So, and the women's suffrage, decades, hundreds of years, right? Some of these things really take time. So do we know for a fact that we are going to be here for the closing party where everything is worked out? We don't know that for a fact. Some of us may, some of us will almost certainly not. But we know that what we are doing is right. We know it is necessary. We know it is meaningful. We know it will keep our characters, our souls, if you will, or whatever you want to call it, intact and whole if we continue to focus on building democracy, fighting for freedom, fighting for rights, fighting for love and equality for all people. And that's what we're going to do. That's how we are going to chop those party water. And I'll tell you a secret, in affirming that, we start to feel it. It's one thing to sort of sit around, stare at my phone, and go into like a despair loop, but when I get up, when I call my representatives, when I show up to a protest, even if there's only 10 people there, which there usually isn't, but when I go to my lawmakers' offices, when I do whatever, when I go and volunteer, for a local event, when I do work in my community, when I go and pick up trash, I have one of my old kind of advisor friends, she's like, just go out and pick up trash, Jessica. Just take an action to make things better, and you will start to feel powerful, you will start to feel hopeful, and you will start to feel like, maybe I can take a bigger action, or take another one. And that is how movements build. So, the first question here, the topics for today, why do grassroots matter? Because we're everything. Because we are the entire ballgame. Politicians will do the bare minimum. There's a few exceptions, and we know who they are. But really looking around right now, you go, wow, these politicians are not going to save us. We have a few, AOC and Jasmine Crockett, we all know who they are, who are living up to their jobs, but so many are not. They're going to have to be pushed. And already we are hearing that we are pushing them. I was on an Indivisible meeting last week, and they said, we are hearing from people on the Hill that the phone calls are making a difference. Not everybody will admit it, but it's moving. What does grassroots work matter? It's everything. It's literally everything. No action you take is too small. Nothing is insignificant. Everything rests on whether we decide in this moment it's too hard, I'm going to give up permanently and walk away, or whether we say it's really hard, but I am going to keep chopping wood and carrying water anyway, for my democracy, for my kids, for each other, for my community. I'm going to keep going. Because it is when you start to take the action without the hope that real miracles arise. And we are going to find that out as we do this. It's not easy, and I want to say that, like everybody sitting here today, I know how hard this is, but I also like to remind people, think about what it took for you, every single one of you, to find yourselves in this seat. Well, I didn't set my timer. Oh, I did. No, I didn't. Sorry. To find yourselves in this seat right now. Think about the people before you, your ancestors. I mean, I don't mean to get woo-woo, but think about the people who came before you who had to survive long enough to pass down the genes and the genes and the genes so that you are sitting here today. Your existence is absolutely barely possible. And here you are. Here we are. We are here in this moment of time. We're here with the ability to fight, with a willingness to fight, with a community in which to fight. This is an amazing and a marvelous thing. Please don't underestimate how much power you have. It has been invested in you by everybody who has come before. It has been invested in you by everybody who has fought this fight before us. And it will be used as momentum and fuel for those who come after. Remember, part of what you are doing right now is creating an inspiration for future generations who will be able to say, those people did not stop fighting. Those people carried the baton. Another generation. Thank God. Now we stand on their shoulders. What are we doing right now? We are building our shoulders so that the next generation can stand on them. Maybe that's all we're doing. Maybe we'll accomplish a great deal more. No one of us gets to own freedom, own justice forever. We get to do the work in our lifetime. That is the good work, the decent work, the only work worth doing. So I want to thank you all for being here. I want to really make you understand how important you are. There's a saying you hear a lot when you go to activist meetings. People love to bring it out because it's just so true and so obvious. If you think that one living creature cannot have an effect, think about being trapped in a room with a mosquito, right? You can have an effect. You can have an effect. Whatever you do, do it well. If you're someone who makes good signs, go make a sign and stand on a freeway for an hour and wave it at people. If you're someone who's good at writing scripts or talking to people on the phone, call your representatives. If you're good at baking cookies, bake cookies and sell them and raise money for a great organization. There are so many ways to help. Just find what it is that you feel comfortable doing and do it. And remember, and I'll start to wrap up with this, what I always tell people as we get into election season, but it matters now too, is that no one of us, especially in a situation this overwhelming, no one of us can save the world, right? None of us individually are going to be that person. But each of us is going to bring our drop to the situation. And you say, what does this mean? Bring your drop of water, right? An individual drop of water on its own is it's nothing, right? I can just flick it off with my finger. No single drop of water means anything. But you take enough drops of water together, and that is how you carve stone, right? That is how some of the great monuments of our earth have been formed, just water, just drops of water. So when you go to do your actions, whatever they're going to be, instead of thinking, oh, how small this is, how insignificant, I urge you to think of the millions of other drops that are joining with yours. Every single one of them by itself is insignificant, but if we all said, I don't matter, I'm going home, there's no wave, right? We need you all. You all matter. What you're doing is hugely significant, and if you ever feel like you want to succumb to despair, I am going to tell you that what you are doing matters. It matters no matter the outcome. And I believe that we are going to win. I genuinely believe. I have run out of my time. So what I'm going to do is pass it off to Robert, and then we're going to have questions and answers, and hopefully we'll be able to. I don't feel that anything I've said was particularly practical, but hopefully it was uplifting, and we do need that right now. What we need hope and reasons to stay in this. I hope I provided a little bit of that, but I know that Robert Hubbell will provide a great deal more. Thank you again for having me, and let's go on.
Thank you so much, Jessica, for your amazing words. Give one more round of applause. Okay. So now, without further ado, I would like to bring Robert Hubbell up onto the stage. Many of you know him from his newsletter called Today's Edition. Any subscribers? He is a husband to Jill, father, grandfather, and retired attorney who began writing a nightly email to his family in November 2016 to help them cope with the news after Hillary's loss. He has been writing Today's Edition ever since. Without further ado, I present Robert Hubbell.
Hello everyone, I am Robert Hubbell, and it is my honor to be here. I want to thank Linda and Molly for putting this event together. Thank you. I frequently speak to groups of volunteers. Let me start my timer. And the one thing that I think people always forget is to say thank you to the volunteers, to the grassroots volunteers. So let's do that right now. Give yourselves a hand. Turn to the person next to you and say thank you for what you have done. You have been phenomenal. We would not be at this moment were it not for you. The next thing I want to do is I want to acknowledge my wife, Jill, who's back here. And I do that in every speech because I had the honor of giving the valedictorian speech when I graduated from college. I thanked everybody except one person, my then girlfriend and now wife, Jill. So let's thank her again. And I want to say to Molly and Linda, I agreed to this gig on one condition, and that is that I not follow Jessica Craven. Something got lost in the translation, so Jessica is a good friend and a tough act to follow. So let's talk about what everybody is thinking. These are tough times. There is no other way to say this. People are feeling distressed and anxious and fearful. And if you are feeling that way, you are not alone. In fact, you would not be human if you did not feel that way. And the only question is, what are we going to do about it? And we are here today because we are committed to doing something about it. We're committed to saving democracy. So let's just start with a question that I think is on everyone's mind, and that is our democracy going to survive? I believe the answer is absolutely yes. And the reason I believe that is because of you. You saved democracy in 2017 and 2018 and 2019 and 2020, and you're going to save it again in 2026 and 2028, and there is no question about that. Now, there are several reasons why I'm so confident, and why I think you should be confident as well, that we're going to make it through this period. The first reason is there are more of us than there are of them. With just a couple of 100,000 votes in 3 states, Kamala would be president. 4 seats that we flipped, and we would be controlling the House. Trump did not win a majority. He won a plurality of the people who voted on November 5th. And 90 million Americans who were eligible to vote did not vote. So don't let anybody tell you he has a mandate. That is a cruel joke. It is propaganda. There are more of us than them. And the only question is, how are we going to motivate those 90 million people, or at least enough of them, to turn out for us to win? So I know the election hurt, but we came so close against such unfair tactics and odds. I'm confident we are going to win again. The second point is, and I just want us to pause and think about this, and that is, America is bigger than Musk and Trump combined. It's bigger than MAGA. It's bigger than white supremacy. It's bigger than hate and intolerance. It is vast. America is an idea that is forward-looking, that promises a better future and optimism. You know, as soon as humans no longer had to worry about where their next meal was going to come from, or what next tribal conflict they had to win, they started thinking, you know, here's this great idea, self-governance. We give most everyone a vote. It took several thousand years to include women and people of color, but the idea was there. It is an idea that keeps emerging again and again and again. It has a life force to it. And what is Trump offering? He's offering nothing, just the opposite. No, nada. He is just against things. So as between a forward-looking idea that promises a better future and a backward-looking idea based on resentment and hate, which do you think will prevail over time? The answer is obvious. Democracy will prevail. And the only thing that matters is whether we are going to remain faithful to the idea. Now, another reason why I'm confident about America's future is that America is an unimaginably vast. And let's just think about this for a moment. It has a scale and a heft and a gravity of its own that is so big that we don't notice it. It's like we're on a massive ocean liner that has momentum that we can't feel. You know, we're the largest economy in the world by a factor of 2, even though we're 1/3 the size of China and India. And let's just take for a moment a sense of perspective about how big America is. You know, we have these horrible cuts happening now to the federal budget. There are 2.4 million federal workers. Trump plans to cut around $200,000 employees. That is horrible. Every one of those cuts is a person. But let's put that into perspective. Do you know how many state level workers there are? 5.4 million. And when you add local municipal workers, the non-federal governmental workforce is 20 million people. That's how big we are. And Trump is going to be cutting about 1% of the total of the American governmental workforce. We are going to be able to survive that. Third, another reason I'm confident we're going to survive is because Trump and his enablers are ignorant, ineffectual idiots. Do not confuse their ability to break things with competence. They have nothing to do with each other. And do not ascribe to them superpowers they do not have. They talk BS all of the time, and the press laps it up. And let me give you an example. Trump has been going on and on about reversing the Green New Deal. And I checked the headlines over the last several days, and the right wing is out there saying Trump is dismantling the Green New Deal. He's cutting it back. And there's only one problem with that. The Green New Deal was never passed by Congress. And yet Fox News and the Washington Examiners within the last 2 days are telling you that Trump is killing the Green New Deal. And it's propaganda. But, we have to recognize that he is trying to make himself bigger and more powerful than he actually is. They are idiots. They are incompetent. And the thing they fear most is us, an energized American people. Now, I want to get to the secret sauce. Here is the secret to our success. Don't quit. If we don't quit, we will win. If all we do is last through 2026 and 2028, we will win. If all we do is hold the ramparts, that's a sacred duty. That's a sacred obligation. There is no shame in that. Let's look back at the people who brought us here. The civil rights workers. How did they bring us to this moment? Well, first they lost, and then they lost again, and then they got put in jail, and then they lost again, and lost again, and lost again, until they won. And that's what we have to do. We have to be willing to endure, to abide, to continue to fight. Just don't quit. George Washington fought 9 major battles. He lost 6, and one of the 3 that he won, he only won because the French showed up with their army and navy. And yet we hold him up as a great hero. And what he did is he did not give up. And I wrote about this in the newsletter today. Rosa Parks, God bless her soul, and her place in history. She set the civil rights movement aflame in 1955. But you know what? There were people not giving up their seats for a century before Rosa Parks refused to do that. She stood on the shoulders of others. And as Jessica said, we're building our shoulders so that others can step on our shoulders. Do not give up. If all we do is prevail, we will win. Now, I get asked every day, what should I do? What's the most important thing that I should do? And so I want you to look into yourself, and I want you to know that what you should do is what you can do. It's not all on your shoulders. You're not going to personally save democracy, but if you do what you can do, that's enough. And be content and at peace with the fact that by doing something, you are adding your voice to the collective voice of tens of millions of Americans. One thing you shouldn't do is just be an issue spotter. We have all the issue spotters we need. That's an incredibly easy skill. All you have to do is hear an idea and then explain to everybody what's wrong with it. Knock it off. We don't need any more issue spotters. And the next person, and I'm serious about this, who posts in the comment section that there aren't going to be elections in 2026 and 2028 will be damned for life. We have to, if you want to spot an issue, that's fine. Include a solution, and then say how you are going to help advance that solution. That's what we need. Okay. So I'm going to wrap up here, and then we'll answer your questions. I just want to come back again to the fact that we're going to be okay. If you feel fearful and anxious, it's all right. So here's my prescription for how we will endure and abide. Stick together and don't quit. If we can do those two simple things, we will outlast them. Remember, there are more of us than there are of them. America is an irresistible idea that looks to a brighter future, and that idea will prevail. America has a scale and a heft and a momentum that is unstoppable. But most of all, and we all know this is true, that most Americans are good and decent people who only want a better future for their children in a society that is just and tolerant and safe. We're going to outlast them. We're going to prevail because of people like you. Thank you for everything you do.